You're listening to Health Innovators, a podcast and video show about the leaders, influencers, and early adopters who are shaping the future of healthcare. I'm your host, Dr. Roxie Mooney. Welcome back to the show, Health Innovators. On today's episode, I have a very special guest, Dr. Ron Razmi, who is the co-founder of Zoic Capital. Welcome to the show, Ron.
Thank you very much. I'm a fan of the show, and it's an honor to be finally on.
Yeah, we didn't talk about that. It's great to have you here. So tell our audience a little bit about your background and, what you've been innovating these days.
Thank you. Yeah, I like to say that I've been abused by everybody in healthcare because I started out as a cardiologist and thought that I was going to be, an academic cardiologist. And, as with any good laid out plan, it went out the door immediately. I received a grant when I was doing my training by the NIH to study emerging sciences in healthcare, which really meant computer and data science. Mm-hmm. So early on, when I was doing my cardiology training, I got involved with digital technology development for healthcare. We were part of the team that developed the rapid sequences for MRI imaging of the heart. And we actually wrote the textbook for it. I was the co-author of a textbook it's called Handbook of Cardiovascular Magnetic Resonance Imaging. That ignited my interest to be on the technology and business side of healthcare. And I ended up leaving medical practice. I went to business school. And after business school, I worked at McKinsey in their corporate finance and healthcare group. And, in 2010, 11, I saw the digital health revolution coming. Mm-hmm. So I started a company called Acupera that I was running for the next 6-7 years. We built population health management software, and our customers included large academic and large integrated networks like Ascension Health, Kaiser Permanente, and Montefiore.
Yeah.
There were a lot of learnings in building and commercializing digital technologies into healthcare. I mean, we encountered issues that even as a physician, I did not know existed in terms of all the stakeholders who need to sign off on purchasing a technology, the data being a total mess and fragmented in so many different databases, the workflows, lack of interest in a lot of these products by nurses and doctors and so forth. So a lot of great learnings from that. And now we're investing in these technologies through Zoic Capital, and we're trying to incorporate all the learnings from years of building and suffering, commercializing these technologies into selecting the best technologies to invest in.
So tell us a little bit about your book.
Yes. So my book just came out. It took me 3 years to write it. And really the writing of it, when we were developing the thesis for the fund and synthesizing the learnings from the first decade of digital health, apps, wearables, enterprise software, the low adoption rates, how consumers and clinicians did not behave the way we predicted back in 2011. So before I did my next big thing, I wanted to create an inventory of all the learnings from these different companies and different technologies and so forth. And that kind of morphed into the effort for building an investment platform where we had a knowledge management system, database, and so forth to work off of, and writing the book. So the book is called AI Doctor, The Rise of Artificial Intelligence in Healthcare. And it's really at its core, it's a business book. Mm-hmm. It does talk about what AI is and what are the applications in healthcare, what are the drivers and barriers for the adoption, but everything builds up to the final section, which is the business of health, AI in healthcare. And what are the use cases that are here and now? Yep. What are the use cases that are medium term? What are the use cases that are long term? And how do buyers of these technologies, which are medical centers, life science companies, choose which technologies, select the best technologies to buy And how do investors and entrepreneurs make the right decisions to spend time building or investing in these technologies that can create return on investment for people who are investing, but also the entrepreneurs don't spend years building a technology that nobody ends up using. So that's what
Yeah.
the book is.
So let's there's so much to unpack with that, and in my mind, like that is one of your innovations that you're bringing to market is this book. I've had a number of guests on the show that talk about AI in healthcare. But what I think makes you and your book so different is really the business stance, the business take on it. It's not just about AI and the history and kind of healthcare, which is much needed right now. So let's start off the conversation by talking to people that are the leaders across all of these healthcare organizations that are some panicking and some just curious of how do they not miss out on the AI revolution and better equip those companies to be able to provide value and to be able to scale. And they're assessing what to buy and when. What are some of the lessons learned that you have to share with them?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, uh, when we speak with investors about putting money into our fund, one of the questions that comes up, you spent 3 years writing this book and developing the thesis for this fund. Weren't you worried that the health AI train was going to pass you by while you were doing this stuff? I said, not one iota, because I know how long it takes to bring technology into healthcare, and adoption is slow, and
Yeah.
solving problems in a way that's tiptoes around all these issues, all these barriers in healthcare is very challenging and time consuming.
Mm-hmm.
So the idea that these buyers are going to miss out on the AI revolution is not going to happen. It's really about how do you choose the AI technologies today that are ready and are built in a way where people within your medical center can get benefit from them, and because they're getting benefit from them, they're willing to adopt it. How do you
Okay.
bring a technology in that creates a return on investment for you, where it addresses your staff shortage, burnout of the clinicians and other staff? These are the acute problems today in our healthcare system. I just got back from a 12-day trip to the Middle East as part of my book tour event. And I
Mm-hmm.
spoke at a conference in Bahrain. I spoke at a conference in Riyadh, my first time in the region.
Mm.
And I was astonished by what I saw. They
Okay.
want to provide healthcare to their people, better healthcare, and they don't want to build 1,000 brick and mortar hospitals. They're hearing about these technologies, digital technologies, telemedicine, and AI. They're like, can we provide care to millions of people in Saudi Arabia without, using these new technologies? So there's appetite. But when I started digging into what are the issues, it's the same issues we're facing here today. Shortage of doctors, shortage of nurses, issues with um, patient experience.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Everything we're facing today, other countries are also facing. So
Yeah.
these technologies are going to have global reach if they're solving the right problems, and they're doing so in a way that takes the realities of uh, healthcare information systems and the workflows into account. So there's a chapter in the book where it's titled "How Do the Buyers of These Technologies Select the best health AI technologies?" And I have bullet by bullet that they could go through as
Okay.
they're evaluating the 100 different things on their desk that they're being bombarded with. How do you choose the right use case and the right technology that you can invest in this year? Because you're not going to invest in 10 things. You're not going to buy 10 things. You're going to
Yeah.
buy one or two things
Yep.
because implementing new things takes time. and it takes a lot of bandwidth. And most medical centers or pharma companies or medical device companies don't have unlimited staff to roll out technology after technology. You have to choose which ones you engage with.
Yeah, or being able to nurture the adoption of those solutions that were purchased as well. So I want to just talk about like the speed. I've read Peter Diamandis's book. The future is happening faster than you think, and if you're examining all of the content that's being written and published right now around AI or AI specifically in healthcare, you would think that you're on the cusp of missing out because
Right.
you with the volume of content about the topic is drastically different than the actual adoption and implementation of or scaling of these solutions across organizations. I will say that I think that healthcare, which I would say is usually a laggard in industries, is talking about and exploring the adoption of of AI in healthcare and faster than maybe many other technology solutions in the past. And maybe that's part of this kind of disconnect that makes us think like, wow, healthcare is moving full force, but are we really?
Well, I think the talk is good because,
Mm-hmm.
and I think it's happening because we need help. I mean,
Right. A lot
there's
of it.
been, I think, two medical schools built in this country in the last 40 years.
Mm.
When I was going to medical school and doing my residency, there was the talk that hospitals aren't going to be needed anymore, that everything could be managed as an outpatient. And, at
Yeah.
the time, HIV was a big problem, and HIV became something you could treat as an outpatient and so forth. Fast forward now, 20 some odd years, you don't have enough hospital beds.
Mm-hmm.
You need more clinicians. You need more nurses. Because what wasn't taken into account the fact that people are going to live longer, they're going to develop more chronic diseases. And when you're older, you're more frail. You need institutional care. So
Yeah.
we need more hospitals. We need better tools to manage all of these patients. But also, we need more assisted and independent care facilities, all of that stuff. So I think the talk is loud because we need help, and this technology can actually help.
Mm-hmm.
In order to bring those together, we need the right solutions to be built that you can actually implement and start solving these problems. I'd say we're in the early stages of these solutions being built.
Yep.
There's some stuff in radiology, some stuff in ophthalmology, some operational use cases around optimizing
Rotation, scribe. Yeah.
operating room usage and so forth. The scribe piece is interesting, the documentation. I write extensively about that in the book. The
Okay.
issue is in the quality of the products. Like I talk about Suki. There's a company, a bridge now, that's raised a lot of money and is booking a lot of business around their generative AI documentation solution. By the time the book went into publication, and when I was calling my sources and asking, I still wasn't hearing, oh, this new version that has generative AI in it is so much better than the old version, or this problem has been solved. So it's
Yeah.
important not to use colorful language around things that are supposed to do something, but until it's fully verified that these technologies could listen to a doctor patient conversation and create a great note that the doctor looks at and says, this is great. I don't have to type anymore. This is taking care of it. Because what's happened is with the previous versions, or maybe with the current version, the doctor has to do as much work editing the note as they would have to. So I
Yeah.
think that's a great short-term use case if these
Yeah.
products prove that they're actually going to do what they're saying they're going to do.
So we have a client that we're working with right now that solves a documentation problem in the physical therapy sector, not broader healthcare. And they're doing something different than what you just described, which is where most AI documentation tools are, right? Where they're doing more of the ambient listening and kind of paraphrasing in many ways and putting that information into the medical record. And in many cases, that's very dangerous because that it could be paraphrasing it in a different way or overlooking some of the very specifics that the doctor or the clinicians said. Whereas what they're doing is they are actually documenting it verbatim and then using AI to pull specific pieces and place them in the EMR system. But let's just talk about this particular challenge when they are going to market and in front of multiple buyers. The buyers for that solution are not sophisticated enough to understand the difference between the fluff or maybe the danger of the ambient listening tool versus the different scenario application that they have. And so what do you say to AI companies where the market is just really not mature enough to really understand the distinction between something that's really providing value and something that might be creating just as much work or maybe more work instead of solving the problem?
Yeah. So first of all, I think that's a really good use case. And one of the things I write about the book is these AI models. Training them is not easy, so they have good performance in the real world.
Yep.
It sounds easier than it is. So focusing on niche areas is the way to go instead of
Mm-hmm.
creating this like big thing, because that's going to miss a lot of stuff. It takes years to train on different specialties. So let's
Right.
take physical therapy and train our model on the lingo of physical therapy.
Mm-hmm.
That improves the performance of the model in the real world, where it's listening and it's creating a nice note. I like there was a company, Seikara, that I talk about in the book, which focused on orthopedics,
Yep.
and
Yep.
they proved their use case, they proved their
Mm.
efficacy in orthopedics, and they ended up getting acquired. Um, so that's the ticket: is a focusing on something that you're not necessarily boiling the ocean,
Mm-hmm.
and consequently, when you're piloting it, it falls short of expectations, and then potentially that doesn't translate into a commercial contract. It's about showing that performance.
Mm-hmm.
And if you have focus, it's much more likely that you could show that performance. So I think if I was commercializing that technology, I would go into these potential customer environments and saying, this is why these other solutions don't work, because they're trying to solve healthcare. Look, the way a cardiologist talks in the office is very different than neurosurgeon, orthopedics, physical
Mm-hmm.
therapists. To say that's why those solutions have not delivered the expected results. Here's how we're solving that problem. We have
Yeah.
focused in this one specialty and really improved performance. So give us a chance to show you how good this is. And if it does perform up to expectations, nobody's going to want to go back to typing up their notes.
Right.
Uh,
Right. Right. Yeah.
you know, if
Yeah.
I'm sitting there talking to my patient, giving instructions, when I'm done, I eyeball the EMR and my note is already there. All I have to do is sign it. If the CEO doesn't start paying for that and cancels that pilot, I'm going to
Yeah.
go tackle him and choke him.
Yeah, exactly. I think that it boils down to being having that really unique value proposition. So you're not being put in the category with all of the other sea of maybe more generic documentation tools. And then also the targeting strategy. Your book is about business, so let's talk about some of the business concepts. That if you are targeting innovators and early adopters, they are going to be more well versed in making that distinction, where if you're trying to talk to the early majority or late majority of the market, or even the laggards that are like, I don't even know what AI does.
Right.
And the messaging and the market, I think, also are really fundamental business decisions for these innovators to make that can make a difference in their commercial success.
Yeah, I mean, I think first of all, nobody cares that your solution is an AI solution. That's number one thing to understand. You need to
Yep.
focus on the benefit you're providing to them.
Yeah.
If you're creating a nice node and you're removing the need for spending time documenting, you could be using quantum technology, Martian technology,
Right.
whatever it is, nobody cares.
Exactly.
It's important to focus on the benefit you're providing and explaining why your solution is providing that benefit where others have failed. And I think saying we have focus, we were able to get the training data, emphasizing those relationships that enabled you to secure the data,
Yeah.
and then showing it in action. The other thing that I mentioned that's really important, remember, if physical therapy documentation is not high on their list, like if they have more pressing needs, even a good solution like that may not get traction in a
Sure.
lot of places because they have more important problems where they're shopping for technology. So figuring out
Yep.
where the real pain points are, where it's pain point to the point where I'm willing to cut a check for it today.
Yep. Yeah.
It does so happen that documentation is one of those pain points because
Mm-hmm.
it's adding several hours of work
Yeah.
for doctors every day, nurses, when they're taking care of patients in the hospitals and so forth. Documentation is a pain in the ass for them. If you can, there's ambient technology now that could monitor the patient in their room. If they need help, it can alert. They're called virtual assistants.
Yep.
It can alert the nurse to engage with the patient, but otherwise the nurse knows everything is fine. When that interaction happens, it creates the note, and the
Mm-hmm.
nurse could review it and sign it and so forth.
Yeah.
That's the kind of thing that provides real benefit for these medical centers that are trying to take care of these patients. Staffing, there's wage inflation.
Mm.
So, it's hard to find talent. B, you have to pay him so much that it really affects your economics. So technology becomes the way you can address that problem, where you don't need as much staff. Your staff is happier and more efficient. That you can manage more patients. So all you have to have is imagination, a data and research oriented mindset to identify the right problem and be confident that if you have the right solution, you can gain traction immediately. And then obviously building a solution that solves the problem in a way that doesn't create more work. That's been part of the problem with
Yep.
digital products is they somehow in other sectors of the economy, technology automates things and takes away work that you used to do, like in travel and so forth.
Yep.
In healthcare, it always creates more work, like like electronic health records. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
the typing and all of that stuff. That's a real problem, and people have been traumatized. Medical staff have been traumatized by digital technologies being brought to them to help them, and it ends up creating a lot more work. So no wonder they're not open to
Yeah.
new
Absolutely.
solutions. They're
I mean,
skeptical.
we have a client that was kind of out of pocket for about 5 months because they were changing technologies, and no one could have ever predicted that the change in the technology, very similar to EMR, was going to require multiple technologies being changed, multiple technologies being integrated, and then also a complete overhaul of all of the workflows to be able to match the technology, because they couldn't continue with the processes and the workflows that they had prior to the technology. It couldn't coexist.
Yeah, and we talked about staff shortages.
Mm-hmm.
IT is an area where there are significant staff shortages at these institutions.
Mm-hmm.
That's another big problem is
Yeah.
the fact that oftentimes what's happening is there's consolidation going on. Medical centers are going out and acquiring physician practices, and they're trying to create an integrated network. And that means that everybody's on the same enterprise EHR. So when you acquire a clinic, you need to integrate their EHR into your EHR. That's a lot of work. So a lot of the IT staff is tied up with doing this like basic blocking and tackling in the IT department, which isn't sexy. Here you come now with a fancy AI product. Really, one of the things you're up against is the bandwidth of the IT staff to connect you with the information systems you need to be connected with for your system to get the data it needs to perform its function in real world and in real time. Because if your output is too late,
Yep.
Decisions have been made. Things have already, life has moved on. So that's another challenge that you need to really take into account before you embark on a journey for years of building something and bringing it to these institutions.
Yeah, yeah. So let's talk about the innovator, the entrepreneur that has, the innovation that they're bringing to market, and get your perspective, as an investor, and somebody that owns a VC firm. Are Everyone that I talk to is trying to raise money, and they are, and some, are like, I will just take money from anybody. Can I just get some money to make it from A to B? And, others are, want to be more strategic and selective about that. So what are some of the advice that you have for those AI powered innovators who are, do I go with any VC firm in Silicon Valley, or do I go with one that specializes in AI, but it could be AI for multiple industries, or does it need to be AI that specializes in healthcare, or even AI that specializes in a specific niche in healthcare, like we were talking about physical therapy? Are there pros and cons?
Yeah, first of all, I think the super specialist investors, I don't know too many other than us
Mm-hmm.
who say we're investing in this technology in this sector. Usually VC firms are invest in different sectors and different technologies. There's usually one person who's like the healthcare investor or, maybe the digital health investor.
Yep.
Hopefully they have some experience as an operator or as a clinician, usually not. So the idea that, I can bring money in from a really smart person who understands the problems I'm going to encounter, that I could be selective enough to find someone like that, is probably not realistic in a high interest rate environment where VC investments are way down across the board.
Mm-hmm.
They're also down in digital health, and a lot of bad investments were made in the last few years at high valuations.
Yep.
Those valuations are way down now. The amount of money being invested is way down. And the real problem is the entrepreneurs were building the wrong solutions. They were building radiology solutions, and they thought if they got FDA approval, they can get market traction. That's not really the case. The FDA doesn't require you to do real world clinical trials to show the benefit of your solution.
Right.
So if you have FDA approval, it's a ticket for you to go market your solution, but that doesn't mean the providers are going to buy what you're saying. The institutions are going to say, what is the ROI?
Yep.
Is the insurance going to pay for it, or do I need to pay for it myself?
Mm-hmm.
So most of these products have struggled in gaining traction in
Mm-hmm.
the marketplace.
Yeah.
So you have entrepreneurs who don't necessarily do the right business analysis up front.
Mm-hmm.
You have investors who are not specialists in this area. They hear something, it sounds really good. Oh, FDA approval, AI to read tumor on a liver, sounds really good. And then all of that money is for nothing because companies can't wait around forever for the market to catch up with them. They need
Right.
to at some point have return on investment, be able to ramp up revenues. the investors after a few years are going to get impatient and they want distribution of capital back to them. So if first I would say really do a deep dive in your business and make sure you haven't made unrealistic and lofty assumptions about your adoption path.
Yep.
And then if you're and seek outside help, people who are actually experts and can round out your blind spots.
Mm-hmm.
And I think at that point, I think the market is such that anybody who writes you a check, you need to get down on your knees and pray, and and thank your creator that you were lucky enough to raise money, because money is tight right now.
Yeah.
So I think if you have a mind-blowing solution and you're getting viral market traction and your revenues are exploding, and it's not you saying my revenues are exploding, there's actual proof of it,
Yeah.
you may have choices of who you take money from. Most companies don't.
Yeah. So what
So
are some of those
that soul
milestones?
searching is really important up
Yeah.
front.
So, so I see that all the time of struggling with wanting to partner with someone that shares a vision, shares the values, but also just needing money and making some concessions, and maybe some compromises with just getting access to capital, and will worry about that value and vision alignment later on. And sometimes it works out, and sometimes it doesn't. For those innovators in our audience right now that are kind of at this point in their journey, what are some of the things that you particularly look for when you are analyzing an investment opportunity? Maybe it, kind of like from the pitch to the business model to maybe the milestones that are achieved, or, what are you looking for?
Yeah. So we've actually developed scorecards that we score along multiple criteria, 1 to 5, one for the use case, one for the company. This comes out of our experience in the space and knowing all the things all the barriers.
Yep.
So you mentioned specialist investors. We're the definition of specialist investors, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's not just because we call ourselves, we actually are physicians who build technologies, who build companies. And so we've developed these very strict scorecards where we assess for availability of the data. What is your ROI to your customer? Are you solving a mission critical need?
Mm-hmm.
Or are you solving a nice to have need? Do you fit within the existing workflow? If
Mm-hmm.
you need to plug into the EHR for your system to work, we're not interested. That's
Yep.
so difficult and it takes so long. Also, these EHR companies are very good at slow walking this kind of thing, and the IT staff doesn't want another vendor that they have to plug into their EHR. So we apply these criteria to the companies, and we're also not interested in super early stage. We're AB investors. We want a few million in revenue, at least 5 to 10 enterprise customers,
Yep.
because at that point, the technology risk is mitigated to some point. The risk shifts more to go to market and commercialization, which also is our area of expertise. So we can actually help these companies achieve that next stage of growth. But I would say our scorecards, last year we diligenced 52 companies. We issued 2 term sheets. So most companies, we identify those issues. I mean, like, we're the nightmare investors. So you said alignment of vision and so forth. But also, if you have knowledgeable investors in your sector, they can find issues that you don't even know about, right?
Yeah,
So,
exactly. The
so
blind spots, right? Yeah.
yeah, that sort of very detailed colonoscopy we perform. That sort of our methodology has been honed over years,
Mm-hmm.
and these scorecards. it allows us to invest in companies with great confidence that we're not investing in a nice to have. We're not investing in
Yep.
something that requires too many data interfaces and so forth. But also, we're more relaxed about other things. If we find the right technology that's solving the right problems, if the team doesn't have commercialization experience, if they don't necessarily understand how to message it for their customers, we can help with that. We know
Yeah.
how to talk. As a matter of fact, I can go with them and sell. Part of the reason my company grew is because when I was selling to medical centers, they were talking to a cardiologist.
Yeah.
I wasn't going to get stomped by a chief medical officer. I
Mhm.
spoke their language. So
Yeah.
part of what we bring to the table is our own expertise, our own network, our own connections, and ability to look at a product and say, oh, by the way, do you know with this kind of technology, you can do X, Y, and Z? Oftentimes it's a surprise to them because they
Yeah.
don't necessarily know healthcare enough.
Yep.
So I think dealing with sector specialist investors, it's a double-edged sword.
Mm-hmm. Let's talk about that a little bit. That business model optimization, because I think that that's really valuable too. Of when you talk about those having that domain expertise, what I've also seen is that sometimes the innovator themselves might be thinking the business model is structured a certain way. And once they share that with me or with you, you see much greater potential and in going maybe a slightly different direction. And if they can let go of the grip of their bias and assumptions of how they're going to be successful and shift a little bit, and kind of reimagine, listen, maybe you'll do that later on, but this is where you're going to make money. um, let's talk about
That's
maybe some examples of optimizing the business model and how that made a big difference.
Yeah. First of all, I think a lot of these companies know. I mean, they need people like you who can point out to them, like, here's example of 50 other companies that travel down this road, and here are the
Yep.
lessons for you.
Yeah.
The other thing is uh, dealing with founders and operators who are invested in their success, invested in their own success, invested in success in general, rather than the current product or the current business model and so forth. If you
Yep.
have investors or consultants who can come in and optimize your product roadmap and improve your commercialization plan, who cares if your initial idea is not being used? You're
Right.
here to be successful.
Yeah.
uh, it's like writing. When my book went through, I don't know how many rounds of edits and iterations and rewriting. There is no such thing as a good first draft. Same thing with business plan. A business model is a first draft. Let experts and your investors and people who know what they're doing come in and improve it and write it up to success. I tell the CEOs, do you want to keep running your company? Do you want to make money? Uh, have amazing listening skills
Yeah.
and take
Yeah.
in new ideas and input and incorporate it. You take credit for it. You get credit for it. And you're like, I made my
Right.
company a
Right.
$1 billion company. Nobody cares if the idea came from a consultant or from your investor or somebody you met at a conference. You
Yeah.
get all the credit. I
Right.
said to them, the only thing that could trip you up is having dogma and being too married to what you're doing and not having good listening skills.
Yeah. Yeah. It reminds me of my doctoral journey. When I first set out with writing my dissertation, I was solving this problem in this way, and my research was going to look like this. And after going round and round with those committee members, semester after semester, at the end, I was like, listen, if you want purple cow, purple elephant, I don't care. Just tell me what you want. I'm putting it on here. I just want to get published. I just want to be done with this thing. So, I mean, you might hold on to it at the beginning, but then it becomes really painful and apparent that you just want to you want to cross the finish line.
Absolutely. And if your first business plan is resulting in explosive growth and like you're taking off and everything's hunky dory, then you can ignore your consultants and advisors and investors and so forth. You can point to your success and say, I don't want to mess with success.
Yep. Yep.
Uh, but that's not the case with most companies. They even if you have the right product, your
Yeah.
business plan probably needs some tweaking. Your product is going to need an act two. You can't solve a single problem and think that that's going to take you all the way to a big exit. Usually you need to find adjacent needs that you can solve with the same product that gives you pricing power. It gives you market share.
Yep.
So I think an open attitude, good listening skills, being invested in your ultimate success rather than your initial ideas are ingredients we definitely look for. We
Yeah.
actually, because we have expertise in this area, a lot of times when we engage with companies and we're starting our due diligence process, we're coming up with ideas all the time, and we're sharing those ideas with these
Yep.
entrepreneurs and operators, and we see their reaction. We see,
Yeah.
are they resenting it and resisting it, or are they, oh my God, this is great, I can sign more customers and ramp up my revenue. So we in a very subtle way are watching them to see do they suffer from attitude problem, or are they cool cats?
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. So I hate to even wrap up because I swear we could talk about this for days. You have such a wealth of information and so many different layers that we can unpack. Maybe we'll have you on for another episode in the near future. But as we wrap up, is there anything else that you would want to share with our audience, whether it's the user, buyer, builder, or investor point of view?
Yeah. So I go back to Newsweek. Um, did an in-depth interview with me and published an article about the book recently,
Okay.
and I convinced them uh, not to get too aspirational in their write-up. And fortunately, the title was AI is gonna it will unlock secrets to human body in the next few decades. So because
Listened.
you have longevity people running around saying, let me use AI on your microbiome or genes, and I can tell you how to eat and give you supplements and so forth. It's things that
Yep.
we don't have real evidence for. So my advice to everybody is, depending on your goals, if you have unlimited capital, if you have horizon of decades, you can invest in use cases that will take decades to show results. Most investors are going to be looking for a return on an investment 3, 5, 7 years and so forth. So understanding the current use cases, the current unmet needs and use cases is really important,
Yep.
not just for investors. This is also for entrepreneurs and operators who decide to invest several years of their lives in building these solutions and bringing it to the market and suffering through, long sales cycles and so forth. So that upfront analysis of
Mm-hmm.
understanding what is going to be the frontier, the initial frontier use cases that can provide immediate benefit to medical centers, to doctors, to nurses, to pharma companies, to medical device companies in their research and so forth.
Yep.
Building solutions for those unmet needs. And then you live to fight another day. In a few years, that frontier is going to move. There's going to be another set of use cases where the needs of the buyers are going to evolve. The capabilities of these products are going to evolve. Some of these more difficult use cases where right now the technology is not quite there. Those are gonna be ready for prime time. If you take this kind of a 2 to 3 year lens,
Mm-hmm.
build for that, and then evolve with the market, that's really going to be the key to success. I think AI is going to be transformational. It's going to help us find solutions, extend life, practice medicine in a much more automated and intelligent manner. It's
Yep.
just that it's not going to be doing it all today.
Right.
It's going to take time.
Yeah. Yep. Couldn't agree with you more. So how do folks buy your book, The AI Doctor, The Rise of Artificial Intelligence in Healthcare?
You know, I learned from my publisher, Wiley, that most books nowadays are sold on Amazon.
Mm-hmm.
Like when we were talking about marketing strategy and stuff, they're like, we don't even put books in bookstores anymore. Everybody buys books on Amazon. So if you go to Amazon and put AI Doctor, oftentimes it's the first thing on the list. And then you can order from Amazon. It's being sold on Amazon, barnesandnoble.com, wiley.com, all of these different places. I would imagine most people would get it online. And I think 80 some odd percent of the sales so far have come off of Amazon.
Okay. All right. Excellent. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. It's been a fantastic conversation, very valuable to our listeners. And so I appreciate your time today.
Thank you. Great to be with you.
Thank you so much for listening. See you on the next episode of Health Innovators.